Hello, here's our mini lecture or lecturette on Chapter 6, the Caribbean. The Caribbean is the smallest region of all the regions in your textbook, and many people actually don't consider it a separate region from the rest of Latin America, but in your textbook it is treated as a separate region, so we will cover it as such. Notice the physical geography. Let me just point out a few things. Basically the Caribbean region is made up of 26 countries. Most of them are small countries, or maybe I should say all of them are small countries. Um, we have the islands, the Greater Antilles, which are Cuba, uh, Hispaniola, which is made up of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica. Those are the big islands. And then there are many small islands, the smaller Antilles or lesser Antilles. Over here, the biggest one of which is Trinidad and Tobago, right next to Venezuela. So that's one part of the Caribbean region. The other part is what's called the Rimland. The rimland are locations on the continent, on the mainland, but because of historical and cultural reasons, can be included along with the rest of the Caribbean. So here the Caribbean region. So we see countries such as Belize being part of that. The countries here in northern South America, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. And then notice also the coastal areas of Venezuela, the Caribbean areas of Venezuela, Colombia, and Central America are also considered part of the Caribbean rimland, and they do have these areas have very strong Caribbean influence. As I mentioned in my previous mini lecture, here we can see the plate boundary of the Caribbean plate. Notice here's Haiti, and notice how the plate boundary runs very close to Haiti. And you may remember in 2010 there was a strong earthquake that killed over 100,000 people in Haiti. And the reason for earthquakes in this area is the location of the plate boundaries and also volcanoes. There are several active volcanoes, especially in the Lesser Antilles. Here's the climate. It does not vary very much in this small region. Basically, we have two tropical rainy climates or tropical humid climates for the most part. We have the AF climates, which are the very rainy climates in South America and some of the islands here and in a lot of Belize. And then notice Cuba is AW, which is the seasonal, meaning it's rainy part of the year and dry part of the year. So if you notice here, in the climate graph, we have a rainy season in the summer, dry season in the winter there. Something similar in Haiti, whereas some of the other places we get rain year round, such as Puerto Rico. The location of the Caribbean is one where hurricanes happen. Most of the hurricanes begin or originate in the eastern Atlantic Ocean, so near the African coast. They begin to travel. They're being pushed in this direction by prevailing winds. Because of the warm water temperatures, we get hurricanes. So very often in the Caribbean, we get hurricanes. There was the most recent one, Hurricane Matthew, that hit Haiti this year. Just I think about, I don't know, a month ago, very recently, and killed I think over 1,000 people. unfortunately died because of this hurricane. Interestingly enough, in Cuba, which the hurricane went right in between Haiti and Cuba, a lot of people died in Haiti. I don't know if anyone died in Cuba, maybe one or two people. And remember, a few people died in the US too because of that hurricane. And that just shows that even though we call them natural disasters, a lot of the if a lot of the impact of these natural disasters is really due to human uh, preparation or human approach to dealing with these disasters. Cuba has a very good emergency preparedness system that Haiti lacks because of its poverty and because of uh, well, its poverty. Here are some environmental issues. Deforestation. Haiti is almost completely 100% deforested. Um, and that's one of the big things. And there's some others. Population. We see Haiti having a very high population density along with Puerto Rico. Probably one difference though is that Haiti is still growing very rapidly, whereas Puerto Rico is not. Uh, Overall, you see that in the islands, we have pretty high population density all throughout. In contrast, the rimland countries such as Belize and the Guyanas and countries here have a very low population density. I think a lot of that is due to not having very fertile soils. These areas are not very good for agriculture. This is mostly kind of Amazon type of forest. And even in Belize, you find that the Belize is away from that chain of volcanoes on the Pacific coast of Central America, so it doesn't have the fertile soils that other parts of Central America has. So it has the lowest density of anywhere in Central America. Here we see very, very big differences between the population pyramid for Cuba and the one for Haiti. Cuba has this very mature population structure, and we can see there's kind of a baby boom, or similar to what we had in the U.S. here in this period, and then a very strong population drop. So Cuba is another country where population will probably start decreasing in the near future, whereas Haiti, which has a higher population density than Cuba, is going to continue to increase in size, which is kind of difficult to imagine because Haiti has these natural resources have been depleted so much that it can hardly maintain the population it has now. So it's difficult to imagine how it's going to keep getting larger and larger without much of a resource base to support that. The very strong, very important part of the history of the Caribbean is the slave trade. A lot of slaves, even slaves that came to the U.S., went to the Caribbean first, and then they were sent from the Caribbean into the U.S. So because the Caribbean had the sugar plantations and they were involved in the manufacturing of rum, a lot of slaves were brought here from Africa, both by the British and the Spanish. Notice it's kind of interesting how a big slave area plantation area was in Brazil, so a lot of slaves were also brought to Brazil. Languages. Interesting to note that the Caribbean has a combination of languages, even though, the biggest islands or majority of the population speaks Spanish. We have Haiti, which is French. We have Jamaica, which is English. Belize, which officially it's English, but it's a mixture. Being in Central America, there are a lot of people who speak Spanish in Belize. And there are also a lot of people who speak Mayan because this is also a Mayan region. Notice here this three what should I call them, countries and territories. Two of them are countries, one of them is a French territory. Each one speaks a different language. Guyana, English, Suriname, Dutch, French Guiana, French. And you find that variation also in the Lesser Antilles. Human Development Index. It's good to note that there is a variation here because some countries are, and remember, Human Development Index tells you how well, doesn't tell you how rich a country is, even though it's kind of related to that, but it mainly tells you how well the people are taken care of. So in terms of, how well do people live in terms of education, health, transportation, and all those shelter and, all that basic necessities of life. Well, we see that Cuba does pretty well, has a high Human Development Index. So does Jamaica, whereas Haiti has a low Human Development Index. Haiti is actually the poorest country in Latin America. And then some other countries like Belize and Dominican Republic have a medium Human Development Index. French Guiana is not included because it's not a separate country, it's part of France. And you can see some of the Lesser Antilles, they have very high, Human Development Index, and Barbados has very high Human Development Index. This graph also shows you the remittances per capita. So we can see that Jamaica leads the way as far as remittances to the country. Most of them would actually be coming from the US.